In a relationship that is long-term, often chores are a real source of conflict, right? And so my client will be sitting across from me and say, I ask my husband all the time to take out the trash. And I'll say, okay, tell me, I'm going to be your husband, you be you. And then this is what I hear. You never take out the trash. It's not a clean ask. It's an accusation. And so that other person, then their hackles go up. We want to dispel that. So let's take this with the clean ask formula. The clean ask formula is state how you feel, then state your desire, get clear about what you want, and then ask for it in a way that your sweetheart can respond yes or no. When you allow that bigger question, it brings a bigger conversation, and then I see it differently.
Hello and welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Ulrich, and I've been interviewing hundreds of thought leaders across the world who have fresh ideas about the way to handle things, like our guest today, and who have changed the future of things like toxic waste and saving the rainforest. It's just the depth and breadth of people who are good, doing amazing things is astounding, and we're just not hearing it in the negative noise on the news. But this podcast can be your connection to a regular daily dose of optimism and reasons to get up and get going and do what you are uniquely built to contribute. Today's guest is one of those thought leaders. Luckily, I was introduced to Rebecca Mullen via another thought leader, and I'll link you to that podcast. Oh my gosh, that was amazing. These two are part of this world that I'm constantly inhabiting of folks who have the courage and the insight and the background to think about new ways of doing things. So our guest today, Rebecca Mullen, is an author, relationship coach. She is also a podcaster and an artist. She brings artistry to her coaching, and I have experienced it personally. When we met, she graciously offered to coach me through a bunch of issues I was having here with the Goodness Exchange. And I may or may not reveal too much about that, but we all have our hangups, right? And oh my golly, did she change and improve the way I was thinking about things that we're stuck with. And that brings us to her book and the reason why we're going to talk today. This book will change your relationships. It's called 6 Steps to Better Marriage Communication. I looked at almost every single thing we're going to talk about, and I thought, oh, that would be better with my brother. Oh, that would be great with my neighbor. Oh, that would be good with my CEO at the dental practice or the zoning board administrator. So thank you, Rebecca Mullen, for bringing these insights to light. And I hope if you're catching this podcast, you will dive into Rebecca's work and find the kind of break open ideas that I've found there in the last few months. So welcome, Rebecca Mullen.
Dr. Linda, thank you so much. I'm such a fan of your work, as you know, and it's a privilege for me to be here talking with you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for saying such kind things about my book.
That's what we try and do, is open up new landscapes of thinking for people, because it is so easy to just get into the doom and gloom and the grind and the constant problems and the rumination. You have given me new things to ruminate on. New, way more productive things to ruminate on.
You know, the way that you say that is so interesting, because I do think our brain answers the questions we give it. And so if we ask the question, why is my brother so horrible? Or why is my husband never listening to me? Our brain goes to work answering that. And if we can change the question and ask, what's right between my brother and I? What's right? How is my husband trying to communicate? Then you have something different to ruminate on. And that's a cute little way to talk about it. Yeah.
And you know, it becomes about me and improving my way of thinking, improving my mental pathways, improving my mental chatter, because I got no ability to change the zoning administrator's point of view. I got no ability to change my husband of 40, I guess we're married 44 years.
That's
1981.
so cool.
Yeah, 1981. Okay, we were childhood sweethearts. We really were very, but we managed to make it work. But the point is that all this rumination that we all do. We wake up in the middle of the night, we toss and turn, or we're fretting when we should be focusing on the customer standing in front of us, or all the things. Our 14-year-old needs our attention, and yet we're over here thinking about something else. I mean, all of that is pretty darned unproductive in general. We are just traveling the same mental routes that we've always traveled, and they're usually pretty negative.
I love your phraseology, fretting instead of focusing. That's a great line. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what you offer us in this book is a fresh way to go, heads up. You have a section where we're just going to take this book apart. So unlike most interviews that I do, where I have a whole thing, and I do have a whole question over here on the side screen, all the question lists, we're just going to take this book apart. You can see how many annotations I've made in it. And I think that allowing you to just share your insights, in your own words, will help people get a better idea of the life they can have if they add some fresh thoughts to it. Okay, Rebecca, we can dive right in, which we will, to the meat of the subject here. But I just want to give people a super broad overview before we do that, because there is so much to talk about that you and I know each other so well now from chatting 3 times that my impulse is to just dive into the stuff I think is important. But what I want to help people understand here is there's a real logic to your way of thinking, and just to give folks a sense of that. The chapter titles here, the section titles of the book, overcome fear. Oh my gosh. Rebecca is a specialist at helping us dig down a deeper and pull back the onion to find out what our real fears are. And then, get clear. That is so, if you don't, start with the end in mind. Don't pick a fight with somebody if you're hoping to have some kind of weird collaboration at the end. Then she's got, ask cleanly. Oh, this concept of asking for what you need and doing it cleanly is super important. All right. Then we go into this beware of conditions. Oh, don't we all do that to the people, especially to the people we love?
I know.
Okay, if you do it this way, then I'll do this. But if not, oh boy. And then affirm lovingly. That's beautiful. And build boundaries. And I could go on and on. But you get the gist here of this book. It's a very concise way of looking at how we communicate better in all our relationships, marriage especially. And I want to also point out that throughout, there are these sections in the book that actually make you get clarity. Just take a pencil out and actually write down, what fear do I have to overcome? Actually write down, what do I actually desire as the outcome, and so forth. And we do need to be more cognizant, more careful, and more thoughtful in our relationships. We get in these ruts and these patterns.
Absolutely.
So, Rebecca, if you have to say the very overarching thing of this book, what's the overarching thing that sort of everything falls under?
I think it's fear of being vulnerable. We want to communicate because we want to connect, and we're terrified of the intimacy involved in connecting. And so that's why that just foundational piece is, let's just be really gentle with what our fears are. That loosens up the whole world. So then we can be clear about what we actually want instead of being afraid of what we want. When we're afraid of what we want, we ask sideways, we ask dirty.
Give me an example so people can appreciate it.
In a relationship that is long-term, often chores are a real source of conflict, right? And so that my client will be sitting across from me and say, I ask my husband all the time to take out the trash. And I'll say, okay, tell me, I'm going to be your husband, you be you. And then this is what I hear. You never take out the trash. It's not a clean ask, right, Dr. Linda? It's an accusation. And so that other person, then their hackles go up because I'm being told I'm not enough. Well, I'm really afraid of not being enough. So then I respond in kind, and it's just claw after claw. We want to dispel that get the fears into the back seat so they're not driving the communication, and begin to say, okay, what is it that I want? I want more help in the kitchen. So let's take this with the clean ask formula. The clean ask formula is state how you feel, then state your desire, get clear about what you want, and then ask for it in a way that your sweetheart can respond yes or no. Let me take this apart. First, you say, I'm feeling overwhelmed by the workload in this house. That's stating the feeling. Then next you say, I want us to be a team. I want us to collaborate on chores. That's getting clear about what you want. Then you ask cleanly with a yes or no. You say, would you be willing to do the same amount of chores that I do? Would you be willing to take the trash out the same amount of times I take the trash out? That allows your sweetheart the respect that they can answer your question. They're not accused. They hear what you're feeling. They know clearly what you want. And then they can say, oh, I didn't realize the trash was something we were evenly dividing. I thought you were on trash duty and I'm on recycle duty. Well, that's a big aha for me when I was thinking we were supposed to take the trash out evenly. But when you allow that bigger question, it brings a bigger conversation. And now I can go, oh, our refuse is evenly divided. And then I see it differently. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a nice little, just a nice little capsulate example of the kind of fresh thinking that's in this book, just asking us to pause before
that's your thing, right? I mean,
yes.
Pause is the first of your 4 steps.
Yes.
Pause is so ubiquitous. If we could all learn to pause, feel our feelings. And then the line I got from you is, no feeling lasts forever.
No.
And so just notice how we do feel. Wave at that feeling and know that it might not stick around forever. Yes. So what do I want that is over and above that feeling?
Oh my gosh. That is so, okay. So that's it, right? We just use the simple garbage quandary, which a lot of people have, you know. Mm-hmm. I'm looking over here at an interview I did with a wonderful woman named Terry Hofford about body image. And she debunks the myths about how we perceive ourselves. And that's the first thing she talks about, Rebecca, is our fear. Like, why don't we want our picture taken? Because we are fearful of the assumptions people might make or a million things. But she gets us very clear. Her thesis is that even in the area of whether we want our photograph taken or our body image, our fear is that we'll be left alone or that we're not enough or that we can't match up.
It's such a big fear. Mm-hmm. Almost all fears boil down to I'm not enough or I'm not worthy.
Okay. We got to get to all the meat of this stuff because there's so many like really practical things. Okay. So if we say to ourselves, the reason why our communication patterns are missing the mark with our brother or our partner or the zoning administrator or our kid's teacher is because we have something that we're fearful of. And the fact is they probably do too. And so we meet somewhere kind of haphazardly. If it works, it's got to be an accident a lot of times.
That is so true, because fear makes us fight, fly, or freeze. So if we're able to connect, it is an accident until we harness that fear. That is so true. I love that.
And I think we can guess, or we can at least make an attempt. Like one of the things that I see in the political world around, and you know, most anybody who listens to this podcast knows we don't touch politics with 10-foot pole. But one of the things that I think is crushing in this world on all sides is this impulse to not be graceful with others, to just like rush in and just go in with whatever we think or we want or all that, and to not have the sensitivity that the other person has their own fears, their own lived experiences and all this stuff. So you have this great, this great little thing that to have us think about after we pause is protect to connect. I have thought about that dozens of times. Like before I say this thing or write that email or text my brother or whatever. What do I need to protect in myself? And what's a really good idea to protect in the other person too?
How does that change the style of your communication when you pause and ask, what do I need to protect for myself and what do I need to protect for them? What do you notice?
Oh, I think it changes everything. I get more kindly.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
And then if you feel more kindly towards yourself and more forgiving towards the other person, you're going to come off in every sentence or every line that you're writing as a lot more reasonable person to work with. I mean, people are willing to like go into some give and take exchange, and I think we don't often do that. So the door is slammed shut before we ever start.
Right? But they can sense that you're a safe harbor. When you have set the intention before you go into the conversation, what do I need to protect in myself? What do I need to protect in the other person? Maybe. And you're just guessing. But when you do that, you're sort of putting this thing into the air that is like, I'm going to be gentle with you. I'm going to be gentle with both of us. And then people step into that and they feel safer. So their amygdala, that amygdala that hijacks us and sends us fighting or flying or freezing, that amygdala says, oh, everything's okay here. And it kind of goes to sleep. And then the bigger part of us can lead the discussion.
Oh, yeah. Then we can, like I say in the 4 shifts, we can shift up to the part of our brain that can care about the future and the long-term repercussions of things and so forth.
Exactly.
So just to make sure people are real clear about what we're talking about here, we're talking about the everyday and almost repetitive, like Chuck, my husband calls it going down the toboggan run. So we've been married for 43 years, and I don't know, 1981. We were very young and way too young, but we managed all this together. But he calls it going, oh, here we go. We're going down the toboggan run. Like there's no going back once you start down it on these constant repetitive, these repetitive disagreements that we have or whatever. And I think that you've got some insights about the clean ask that would stop that toboggan run from happening. And I'll give you a good example of the level that I think I'm pointing to here for folks who are listening to this podcast. I think your book helped me navigate situations like this. Like we have to divide and conquer all the duties in our house, my husband and I, right? So I do the laundry, but Dr. Chuck has to do the folding. And I'll do the cooking, but he has to do the cleanup. And so we've found a way through all these years to not fight about some of those mundane things that have to happen every single day of our lives. And I'll tell you, when I think about what you said to me in that book, I think intuitively and we've been doing this laundry thing for all our lives. My husband was a professional athlete. So I got it through my head that if he could watch as much professional sports on TV as he could ever want, as long as he was folding laundry or doing dishes at the commercials. And it was a workaround, that acknowledged that what he is all about and that acknowledged that I was not going to take a normal woman's role. I didn't even know how to start a dishwasher until recently. So I want people to understand that the insights that I've gotten from your book are very everyday-ish, and they're just so helpful everyday-ish. And I think this clean ask thing may be kind of the corner. Let's talk significantly about the clean ask, because that's where I go wrong every time no matter who I'm gonna, I don't want to use the word confront because it sounds harsh, but if I have to work something out with somebody, I miss the mark on the clean ask every time.
But we all do. We all do. That's why I think this is rudimentary stuff like you talked about, but it just goes to the core of being mindful before you ask to think about, okay, what is it I really want? Because until you, that magical pause that you talk about, Dr. Linda, until you pause and think about, what do I want? A whole bunch of other things hijack onto your ask, like when you gave that example about he can watch as much professional sports as he wants, as long as he's folding laundry. It feels like there's this hijack of you have to earn your television, right? And we all do it. We all do that. And it
exactly
goes back to that. Say it again. Say it again.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And it goes back to I'm not worthy or I'm not enough. And so if I want the professional sports, I have to make my life worthy by folding laundry, and I can't say this enough. We all do it. And I think it's great to be able to laugh at it, because then that sort of dispels the toxicity of it, and you can go, oh, gosh, what would happen if he just sat and watched sports for 6 hours?
I don't know what would happen. Things would come unglued around here, I'm pretty sure.
Right. And that's the fear, right? The fear is like, the whole world will fall apart.
I think the fear, wait now. So this is what she does. This is what she does, everybody. She makes you like pause and like rethink what you were thinking. I gave that example because I thought it was a good example of me being good, but it's obviously not.
Okay,
it's
not good. It's not bad. It's just, this is
how we do it.
Well, and it's fun. I mean, like, I would be in favor of making that a super overt, like saying, okay, I feel like if you want to relax, then you got to pair that with something else, because that will make me feel less overwhelmed. Would you be willing to fold laundry when you watch TV? I will just have a better attitude. It can become this really clean ask if I am overt about what I want.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. That's a nice little twist. Yeah. Perfect. Mm-hmm. Okay. If I and just being gracefully overt could be all it needs to be. But I want to give it, I think when you said something to me just a minute ago, I want to make sure people are looking for their fears in their own conversations. You know what my fear is? My fear is that we would be overwhelmed by our stuff. I am constantly spending my time. I am constantly spending my time managing all our stuff.
Yeah.
We still have kids that live with us from the pandemic. Stuff gets here and there and everywhere. Every Saturday and Sunday, I spend putting stuff back to where it was, or getting rid of stuff, or organizing stuff, And I look at the time that if we didn't constantly manage our stuff, it would just be like an explosion in a luggage container in an airplane around here.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm going to use one of the other tools.
Okay.
Is that true? Is that true? Your home would turn into just chaos? Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's the other thing, Rebecca's way of thinking. Yes.
Dr. Linda, this is how pervasive our fear is it has layers and layers and layers. And when we can use these tools to question our fear, or to make friends with our fear, or to make our fear feel safe, or normalize or laugh at our fear, then the world just gets friendlier. It gets more permissive, because when we let fear have its way, it's very tight, it's very strangling, it's very mean. And when we just say, oh, sweetie, hey, everybody in this house, there's too much stuff here. We got to be constantly managing it. And then it just becomes something everybody can laugh at, and you can ask for the help, because probably a lot of that stuff does fall in your lap, and that's not fair. That's overwhelming. So you just keep asking for what you need. Hey, I seem to be the leader of this team, so here is me leading. Everybody have something in your hands to keep our stuff managed, because it's a lot of us in this house, and I need a clean environment. to be able to feel sane.
So talk to us a little bit more about the clean ask. Pick a recent situation that maybe somebody who was consulting you was struggling with that maybe isn't as cliche as the laundry thing that that I seem to be trapped in.
I think this is a really tender one that comes up after people have been with me for a while, is people are afraid to ask for their needs to be met. Like, I want permission to sit and watch movies. This is actually a really great example from my life. I have this voice in my head that TV is the biggest sin in the world, and that if you are watching banal television, you are wasting your life. I have worked with this fear over and over because the way that it is toxic in my life is that I'll get embarrassed that I was, like, I'll be secretive about watching television or something because I'm afraid I'm not worthy if I'm doing that. I'm wasting time. So I began to apply this clean ask to the television watching of my own. And I said to my husband, and I got to tell you, Dr. Linda, my husband doesn't give a rip about how much television I watch. He does not care.
That's the important part.
Right? But I was worried that he cared. So I began to frame this up and I said, I'm embarrassed about how much I love television. That's my feeling, right? First step in the clean ask formula is to state your feeling. And it is so hard to say out loud, I'm embarrassed that I love watching television. Second step, state your desire. I want to know that in our home, I have carte blanche to watch as much TV as I want without your judgment raining down on me. That's what I want. I don't know if that's fair, but that's what I want. That's about getting clear what I want. It took me a long time to get there. Then finally, I say, my clean ask that implies a yes or a no. I say, David, that's my husband, David, would you promise that if you ever feel judgmental about how much television I'm watching, that you'll just straight up tell me I'm watching too much television? He said, yeah, but I don't care how much television you watch. But that had been polluting because I wasn't letting myself rest. And when I didn't let myself rest, I got resentful of him. I blamed him. When he would rest, I would blame him because I wasn't letting myself rest. That's what we do. Does that example help?
Yes. And you're reminding me again of something this body image Terry Hofford expert had said, was that a lot of the stuff that's stuck in here that gets in our way, and a fear is usually what comes of it, is planted so early in life. And that it's so much a part of this path that we've treaded 1,000 times in our head that we can't even see it. And I think that television is the vein of all existence notion was something that was very popular in the 70s with our generation's parents, because there was no television when they were growing up. So they just thought it was, the death of civilization. And so they planted those seeds when we were 5 years old or younger. And I think my sister I remember this, we had a basement. My sister used to hide in the basement and watch Gilligan's Island or whatever with her coat, hat, and mittens on.
Because she was so cold.
No, because it was a walkout basement. And when she heard our dachshund upstairs going down the hallway above her, she knew that my dad was home. So then she would dash out the back basement door, come around the front into the garage as he was parking his car, and he would say things like, "Good on you for being outside all afternoon. That's what a young girl should be doing with their time these days." So we have this thing in our family about watching television, that it's not productive use of our time, blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay. So this is the gist of it. Terry had some things that she said about our body image that are set like that, things that our mothers said to us that no harm intended, but they're just stuck in there. So I think when what I'm hearing you say is that when a relationship situation isn't working the way we want it, the first thing to do is to know thyself and to really put some time into figuring out which fear is being triggered by this situation
I
in
know.
ourselves.
And it's so hard to do
Yeah.
that because it's so much easier to blame our sweetheart for it.
Yeah. It's so easy. And then I love this next step. You figure out what your desired outcome is. I know that most of us, we just want our way. We just want the laundry done. We just want no mess. So don't lay around and watch TV around me if there's dishes to be. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
okay. All right. So let's take a break, and then we come back. We're going to start literally having you give some short courses on things directly from the book. Okay.
Okay.
You know how the constant negative noise in our digital lives feels like it's reaching a boiling point? Now, many of us have tuned out the news and social media almost entirely. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. There are newsworthy stories about amazing progress, innovation, leaps in human potential, and wonders in the natural world, and they're just not reaching the top of our feeds. We can have access to this, but none of us has the time or maybe even the emotional stamina to search through all the doom and gloom news to find what's right with the world. Okay, enter the Goodness Exchange. There, we are giving instant access to positive news for curious people. Did you hear about the recent Harvard study that found that exposure to just 4 minutes of good news can make you 32% less anxious and 18% more optimistic? Well, I don't know about you, but I need those kind of numbers in my life. So if you want to live with more joy and way less fear, it's really simple. First, you join us at the Goodness Exchange. Everyone around the world has the opportunity to access this kind of content. And we've promised no politics for about a decade, so you're safe from all that distraction as well. Second, you allow this new, more positive, balanced worldview to put a spring in your step again. It can change the way you react to your kids, your coworkers, everybody you come in contact with. And the stories we write about can make you the idea person in your circles. These challenging times call for us to wake up and take control of our perspective. The people who use the Goodness Exchange have the ability to react to the harshness of the world much different because they know way more about what's right with the world. And that's a resource. So subscribe to the Goodness Exchange, our YouTube channel and the podcast, and use this content to live a more expansive worldview. It is still an amazing world out there, and you can be a part of it. Welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness.
Okay, we're back with Rebecca Mullen. She is a relationship coach, an author, an artist, a podcaster. We're going to talk about that in a little while too. But we're going through her book, 6 Steps to Better Marriage Communication. And my preface at the beginning of this interview, if you're just joining us, is that I am learning some things in here that I can apply to my relationships all over the place. My business relationships, the town clerk, my husband, my kids, who some still live at home. Gosh, if you got kids living at home, you need this stuff. Let's start with something right there. There's a section in here. Make the invisible visible. Talk to us about this concept.
So we have this idea about love that comes from Hollywood. Hollywood, if you're going to go to a movie and spend time at a movie, you want the biggest, grandest gestures of love because you want to have that big, bold feeling. But Dr. Linda, when I talk to people who've lost their spouse due to death, it is the tiniest moments they miss. I had a client say to me once, I miss the smell of toast in the morning because my husband always made toast. And I used to be mad that he'd leave his crumbs on the counter. But now I'd do anything to see those crumbs on the counter because it would mean he was still here. Those are invisible moments that we are sharing a life. And when we can make the invisible moments visible, this is kind of that, when you talk about pause and then shifting up, It's about getting that perspective of what do I enjoy about sharing my life with this person. And I usually, when I'm coaching couples, I say, let's start with your hi and your goodbye. And just just notice the character of your hello. Notice if your hello kind of sounds like goodbye or good riddance. Notice if your goodbye says, I can't wait to see you. Or if it's like, ugh, and honestly, noticing the character gently with compassion for yourself, it will shift the way you say hello and goodbye. And those transitional moments are very invisible. When we can make them visible, then we have this whole experiment. And I have episode 8 of my podcast. I tell a story about how I changed the way I said hello to my husband when he came home from work. And it was unbelievable transformation. It really is my argument that if one person in the relationship shifts their behavior, the entire relationship dynamic shifts.
Wow. That is a key point. And your husband, I think he's an ER doc or something.
Yes.
God knows what he's gone from thing
Exactly.
to thing to thing to thing to thing to all day long.
Exactly.
And then coming home, I bet you a soft landing is structurally important.
So important. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a very emotional person.
Yes.
And I just met him with whatever emotion I had at that moment.
Yeah.
And when I paused to think about what I wanted my hello to communicate, I wanted to communicate, I'm glad you're home. I'm glad you're my person. And then I gave myself permission to feel whatever I was feeling. That's okay. But when I was so overwhelming when he walked in that door, he just began to look like he was walking on eggshells all the time. It was really sad.
I'm glad you're home. I'm glad you're my person.
Yeah.
That is huge.
Right? What if we welcomed our person? This is what I mean by affirming lovingly, is that if you can affirm the love in your relationship just by sending messages, I'm glad you're my person. Hey, you are my person. Because we know that life is full of tangles, and sometimes those tangles make you feel like you don't love me anymore. Or that's at least our fear talking, right? So if you can send little seeded messages that say, you really frustrate me, but I'm still glad you're my person, then you're sending a message that it's safe to argue. It's safe to have conflict. You are safe here with me. That opens up so much room to ask for what you need.
That's just everything, isn't it? I think of the times when I regularly probably don't make it feel safe.
I know.
For poor Dr.
We all do that.
So you talk in the book about the power of yes. And, sometimes, like you mentioned, our yeses are like conditional, which is not that helpful. But I like this yes and concept. And I think we've all heard it because it's kind of in the zeitgeist in our business lives. But the way you explain it, I think that we can use this to way better results in our family relationships. Talk to us about yes and.
So yes, and the way that I was introduced to this was Tina Fey talks about it in improv comedy. She says, yes, and is the way that it makes the scene carry on. And oftentimes in life, yes, but is a scene killer. That's Tina Fey talking. So I took this into, well, that's love right there. That's communication. Yes, I really want to go to the beach with you, but I hate all the preparation for the beach. Well, that but just made it sound like I don't actually want to go to the ocean and beach and enjoy a day. But if you switch but to and, it sounds like this. Yes, I really want to go to the beach with you, and the sand is annoying to me. So will you be my sand patroller with me if we go? Can you feel the magic of one tiny word? And we say the but, Dr. Linda, comes from our fear. I want to go to the ocean, but then I'm going to be the only one responsible for cleaning up this house. And that's so overwhelming that I can't handle it. And so that toxicity seeps its way into the communication when what we really want to do is say, yes, I want to go to the ocean, and I don't want to be the only one cleaning up.
Got it. Okay. So that's the way I would say it right there. And I don't want to be, but I'd say it like this. And I don't want to be the only one cleaning up. So I'd almost say it in a weirdly confrontational way that sort of was accusing them ahead of time.
And I mean, gentleness with yourself, right? Because I think this is one of the things we want to notice is that an ask can get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. So what you're noticing about the way you would say that is, gosh, it could even be cleaner. I could say, and will everybody help clean up when we get home? But it's so important to be gentle with the history, right? The history is you have done all the cleaning up, and you don't want to disregard yourself when you're asking. So I always just say to people, be pretty liberal with giving yourself credit for cleaning up your ask. Because if you got rid of the but and you used and, cheer yourself on. People think in my coaching practice, they think if they're kind to themselves or they celebrate a success, that they're going to kill their momentum. And actually, Dr. Linda, it's the opposite. Because when you see that you're succeeding, when you see you're having small successes, that actually gives you momentum to want to try harder and to clean up the ask more. And so please, please give yourself credit. That's what I want to say to your audience is if you can clean up your ask just a little bit, celebrate and give yourself permission to notice all the ways your communication just got more intimate as a result.
So there's 10 other issues I want to go through, but I want people to know that this clean up your ask and getting it better and better is all fully explained in the book. And, if we just got 1% better at that each day,
right,
or 0.5% better each day, our lives would have a lot less stress in them.
And one of the things I'm proud of, if I can toot my own horn, is that I tell stories in the book, like we've been telling stories today, but then I have those little gray sections that are try this tool. And it's exactly what I would take a client through if you were in my office. We would go step by step because it's hard to get onto yourself, right? So I'm going to give you the tools to ask yourself. We talked at the beginning of this conversation that fretting versus focusing is about the question you ask. So I have filled this book with questions to allow you to gently clean up your communication, one tiny step at a time.
Yeah, and that is really an important part. Is that you see this as a landscape of months, if not years. That
for me, it's the lifetime of my marriage.
Yes.
I've been married, I think, 35 years or something, and it's like, oh yeah. There's a reason this book came late in my marriage. I had a lot to learn.
Well, and there's a reason why you're married a long time.
Yeah.
Right? Because
1% at a time, I was getting cleaner and cleaner.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you don't expect the other person to grow. You're asking yourself to grow equally as much or more.
100%.
Right? Okay, here's, and the little gray area, that's what I was pointing to right here. It's right here in the book. You've got to try this tool. Use but to link up your yes. And so anyway, she goes through the whole thing, walks you right through. Okay. So here's another whole topic. We've been fighting about this for, I'm pretty sure, all the 40 years. I'm not sure my husband comes from a family that apologizes. I'm not sure. He's not a good apologizer. He always puts, I have no idea what made you mad. Or he'll say, I'm sorry, but, and all this stuff. And I am resolutely for 40 years not accepting an apology that's an I'm sorry, but, no matter how beautiful, graceful, and kindly it is.
Yes.
Okay, so talk to us about the apologize well.
So this comes in the 5th step, which is affirm lovingly. I want to let everybody understand that one of the best ways to affirm the love in your relationship is to apologize. It is so profound. And I found this out because I stunk at apologies and I was determined to get better. So these are the 4 steps I use for myself. And it changed my marriage. It changed the dynamic in my marriage. I cannot tell you how much this tool changed. The first step is to say, I'm sorry, period, end of sentence. You can say, I want to apologize, or, hey, I think I hurt your feelings. Anything like that, that opens the door to say, I did something and you feel yucky as a result. So that's step 1, say, I'm sorry, without the but. Step 2, name the behavior. Okay, so for me, I'm going to go to one that really cracked open my marriage, which was, I'm sorry. I asked in a way that made you feel accused and shamed. I am so sorry. I'm owning my language. I'm owning my attitude. I'm owning that. And I'm naming behavior that my husband feels, and that allows him to relax. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to talk about how that probably makes my husband feel. And this, we've talked about how I have a hunch that makes you feel. I don't want to tell him how he feels, but when I can name the feeling, then he feels seen. So I say, I'm sorry. I just said that in a very accusatory way. And that probably makes you feel like a little boy, and I'm shaking my finger at you, scolding you. When I name the way he feels, all that fear that he's not seen goes away. And he comes closer to me. His heart opens, his skin softens. And then I do step 4, which is to promise how I have a plan for doing better in the future. So then my whole apology sounds like, I'm sorry. I just accused you in a way that makes you feel little, boyish, like I'm scolding you. I'm working on myself so that I don't feel scolded and like a child inside my skin, and then I won't treat you that way. I'm a work in progress. I'm on to this. Thank you for forgiving me. Or will you forgive me? Will you be patient with me? What did I miss?
No, that's it. That like there's no human who can receive an apology like that, and you'd have to be in pretty dire straits yourself and that happens. You're just
Right.
not in a mind to receive.
But what that does
grace,
is it connects us as people. Like an apology can open the door. I have a whole podcast episode about how the mistake you make in your marriage can be a door of opportunity for growth.
Okay.
When you apologize well.
Okay, let's just take a sidetrack here from the book and talk about the podcast. Tell us about everything about it so people can go find it.
Okay. The podcast is called Habits for Your Happily Ever After. And you can find it on Apple and Spotify and all that, or you can go to my website and find it there. My hope is that I'm offering a tiny little habit. Sometimes it doesn't feel so tiny for people, but an attitude shift. This is your habit this week to serve your happily ever after. That's the intention. And then I also offer a date night discussion, because when you can talk about things, when somebody else has given you the question, it just allows you to talk about things differently. And so I try to prompt discussions in relationships.
Mm-hmm. And are you interviewing other people? Are you?
I do. So about half of my episodes, you have been on my podcast, which I'm so grateful for. So some of the time, like in your episode, we talked about those 4 steps, the pause, the shift up, and then my big aha from that was, I want to share what I learned with the world, because that's the magic elixir, right? So sometimes I'm interviewing people and we come up with habits from other people's relationships. And sometimes I'm just telling a story much like the book or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, well, I highly recommend it. We did have fun on that interview. I'll make sure
Yes.
that the link to that is in the
Yeah.
podcast. Just so everybody knows, if you go to the website at the Goodness Exchange, goodnessexchange.com, and you go to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast there, just press the podcast button on the big mothership website. There's a lot more stuff there. So this interview will have expanded exponentially into all the other things that you can find there at the Goodness Exchange website for this interview.
I think that's one of the cool things about what you're doing in the world, Dr. Linda, is sort of like, when we think about the food chain, we used to talk about the food chain as if it was link, linear, but now it's a food web. And what you're doing is creating a goodness web that one person finds a little portal in, but then they find all these other things. And that web is creating a place of safety for all of us to change our perspective.
It's lovely. It's a gift that, of course, I was a dentist for 35 years, so I didn't know that all that going through hard experiences with people, 20 a day at that dental practice and getting on a trustworthy level with folks almost instantly, all that taught me to connect deeply, and the rewards of listening and all that stuff. And I guess that was the great teaching long moment before I found that this is what I really feel like I'm uniquely built to contribute. So thanks for mentioning that. We have to talk about, before we wrap up, the marriage meeting.
Okay.
Because that is a concept I think most people would feel awkward about even bringing up, even with our dearest spouse of 41 years. I have trouble thinking about what I'm going to say, Dr. Chuck. We need to have a marriage meeting. I know. I don't know.
It
but
just
anyway,
sounds so awkward. It sounds so awkward.
But so important.
Well, I tell people, don't wait until it doesn't feel awkward. And here's the thing is that with other things in the world, like a treaty, when there is a peace treaty, a peace summit, we think that's important because we value the outcome, but we would never expect a peace treaty to come without tons of dialogue before. So the marriage meeting is a prescription for your marriage so that you can build preventative health into your relationship. And if it feels goofy to you, okay, so this is my strategy, Dr. Linda, of leaning into the awkward. I named ours when we started. I said, okay, we are going to have a financial summit on Saturday. And by leaning into the dorkiness of it, I just owned that it was going to feel dorky. And then we sat down and we had a wretched time together because we fought about money. And this was just like a planned fight. When we ended, Dave goes, well, thanks for making that appointment with me so I could fight with you. and then I said, no, we can do better. Let's try again. Okay. And what came out of the fight is I said, okay, now we're going to do the same thing next week. And you're going to think about a question that we could ask each other. And I'm going to think about a question. And that gave us a whole week to reflect. And we did do better the next week. We still weren't great, but it's that 1%, right? And this gave us a forum because money was our biggest conflict issue. And we would have a financial summit. We knew what it allowed me to do is to stop hijacking him in the middle of the week with a financial question or a financial accusation. It gave me a forum for when I have something that really drives me nuts about how he spent money, I put it on the list. And I knew I was going to bring that to the financial summit. And just that is the enforced pause that you talk about, right? I couldn't respond in that emotional moment. I brought it to the meeting, and then he is showing up ready to receive, right? That's our agreement. And at first it wasn't great. I finally get to the meeting and I'm a little bit explosive, but then I say, I'm sorry. Thanks for showing up and listening to me. And I'm going to give myself the gold star that I didn't say this to you in the middle of the week.
Like, why do we expect everything to be working on our time? It's a real flaw in us that we have to be so reactionary in the moment, and
I
almost
know.
nothing. Like, if we can possibly pull up and wait 24 hours on almost anything, I'll
Right.
tell you, that's how I've gotten through my relationship with a lot of difficult people in my life that I can't walk away from. I use a 24-hour rule. I just, the number of times I would have fired back a fiery text to my brother, let's say. And then if I waited 24 hours, by the next day, he would have done something miraculously lovely. And I would have felt like such a jerk had I press send. Sometimes I write the text, but I don't press send.
Oh, yeah.
For 24
Well,
hours.
and that's part of seeing your fear, or seeing your feeling. You write the text so you can see what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And then you walk away so
Don't
that you
press
can
send.
let the feeling live in your body. And then, like you said, no feeling lasts forever. And so then the feeling leaves, and you can draw the wisdom from the feeling in that email you wrote but didn't send.
Right.
Then you can write an email that delivers the message without all the toxicity.
Yeah, that is a giant aha moment. Okay, so that's what this book is filled with. There's so much. Picking your battles. I mean, don't we need a little? Okay, come on. We have to wrap up with a little bit on that, because we can't. Life is hard. Like, we can't expect it to be almost. I've just given up on expecting life to be easy, and my goal isn't to be happy anymore. My goal is to, in every situation, find something to be grateful for. I mean, I've just tried to evolve out of some of my old needs, right? So talk to us about that, choosing your battles, before we wrap up.
So you and I have the good fortune to be married a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And the perspective that you get when you've been married a long time is that there are a lot of things that feel so important when they're happening, because it's the first time you've faced something. And I so get this. And young married life is full of, you're starting a family, you're starting a career, you're trying to buy a house. There's so much on your plate. Be gentle with the whole of your relationship. Remember that your relationship could last decades. Notice what you want to go to the mattresses about. Is it really the crumbs on the counter? Like when I tell you the story of the woman who missed the crumbs on the counter, I can't tell you how many people sit in my office and talk to me about how they just leave their crumbs wherever because they're so entitled. And I think, okay, let's find the bigger battle. And I'm coming back to that clean ask so that I can frame this as picking my battles, okay? When you leave your crumbs on the counter, I feel frustrated and helpless, and I can't keep the kitchen clean. I value a clean kitchen. I'm not asking you to be perfect, but could I ask you to notice that a clean house is important to me? And when you do something to clean the house, would you just announce it to me so I can feel you trying as hard as I feel like I'm trying?
Yes,
do you
ma'am.
see how I picked the battle by trying to make it about something much bigger than the crumbs? If you spend your time arguing about crumbs, then your marriage is flavored with these details.
And it's all crumbs.
Yeah, then it's all crumbs. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's so true. And, part of the insight that I've had from being involved with thousands of families in the dental practice for 35 years is that, I would spend almost once a week, every week, with my head on my desk, sobbing, trying to write a condolence note. I'm telling you, if you know thousands of people's lives as closely as my husband and I do, you're well aware of the fleeting nature of life. The damnedest things happen to people all the time. And we just got to stop fighting about the crumbs. I
We got
mean,
to stop
like
fighting about the crumbs.
yeah, that's going to be, it just, I can't even tell you how fleeting
But
life is.
but we don't want to ignore our
No.
own feelings. So
Right.
we can ask for consideration, or,
Yes.
I want to be seen. I want to be
Yeah.
valued by you. This is how you can do that.
After speaking to you one day, it drives me crazy when when people put stuff in the microwave and then it all pops all over the microwave. I'm constantly cleaning the microwave. And so finally it came up. It was, and I was like, I was just going to let it go and go down the toboggan run for the 50th time. And I thought of your smiling face. And I went into it entirely different. And I paused and then I'm like, I'm sorry if I've communicated this in just this weird, harsh way all this time. Because I don't know. It just is one of those things that's important to me, that when I go to put my coffee cup in there in the morning, that the microwave is clean. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe I grew up in a household where the microwave was just a cesspool. And so now, I mean, I don't know that that's true, but for whatever reason, this is one of my inflection points. Can you help me with it? And I asked it in such a better way. And it just is not a problem anymore.
I love that. I love that. That makes me so happy.
Yeah. And I know it sounds, mundane and small, but I think that with everybody who's listening to this podcast, you'll have your own versions of every single thing that Rebecca and I have said and talked about. And maybe especially if you're in a younger relationship, a newer relationship, like get to the big overarching conversations you might need to have, and not make it about the crumbs. I mean, you're likely to lose a really good future to arguments about the crumbs.
And love is small and mundane. So how can we infuse those crummy moments with love? I love you. I love that you eat in the same kitchen that I do. And I value a clean kitchen. So you can kind of say it all you're valuing the love as you ask for what you want.
Lovely. Well, that's a great way to wrap up. Okay, so if this conversation had been just 3 minutes, I mean, sometimes when you write a book, you get a few interviews on the news, and I know when that happened to me, oh my gosh, like to condense the whole book into 3 minutes, but if you had to say, what do you really wish people knew? What would it be, Rebecca? What do you really wish people knew?
So, because I'm a fan of your podcast, I knew this question was coming. And here's the thing for me, Dr. Linda, is at home with our sweetheart, that's where we feel safe. So we let down. And I don't know about you, when I let down my guard, I tend to treat the people I love the most the worst. And then what happens is then home doesn't feel as safe. So my reason for this book is to just give you tools to plant peace into that primary relationship at home. Because my wish for the world is that if we could get our cup filled with peace and love and belonging at home, then we would go out into the world to spread peace and love and connection. Because the opposite is, if you don't get your cup of love and belonging at home, you go out into the world thirsty and hungry and attacking and craving. And that just builds. So it really is just that hopeless optimist in me that says peace begins at home. And I guess my hope is that we can change the world if we sow those peaceful moments and love the people that know us best.
I'm not going to add one word to that. That is just so, so lovely, Rebecca. Thank you so, so much. Let's just wrap it up right there.
I feel so privileged to have met you. I My life is so much better because of knowing you. Thank you so much for letting me in, for including me in your podcast and including me in your story. I'm so grateful.
Well, you are certainly, a prime example of the fresh voices and fresh perspectives that this tired, cranky world needs. And I get called a Mary Sunshine or a rose-colored glasses person all the time. And I'm telling you, I just think that there's enough problems in the world that we just haven't applied enough imagination to. We're just stuck in these ruts. And once you get somebody like you or all Terry or John or all of these crazy good people, once you look at a landscape that full, the landscape I have found in the world of innovative people like you, helpers. Helpers are the ones running towards the problem, not away from it, and they're not ratcheting up the drama. And this is what the gist of our conversation has been. Every single word that's just come out of your mouth is about taking down the drama in our life. And I think it's what we all want. Mm-hmm. And you've used the word gentleness about 50 times. We got to be gentle with ourselves, gentle with others, gentle with our, So thank you so much. And I can't tell you how much this book, I'll let you look at a beautiful cover as well. This book has improved my marriage and my relationship with, I have 3 kids that live with me now. They're young adults, and in Vermont, it's almost impossible to afford housing when you're just getting started in the working world. So here we all are, and you've made the Ulrich Verderber household better for it. So thank you so much, Rebecca Mullen.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.